I just want to watch that. I want to watch it again.
That's my favorite videos.
Good morning. Always a favorite of mine at Christmas. It's a cute one, isn't it? Yep. I know, it's on YouTube, so you can find it there. So we're happy to see you. I don't know if you can feel, but our new furnaces have been installed. Can you feel? I know Brandon was complaining about that warm air, so for me it feels like a relief on a cold winter day. For this sweaty man, I guess it's a little bit too much, but we're thankful that they're done. So 3 new furnaces have been installed, so that's great news. So we don't have to worry about them dying anytime this winter on us like we were dealing with last year. So, as usual, before we get started, I just have a few announcements. As you all know, Christmas is almost upon us. So just a reminder, we're having our Christmas Eve service. In full transparency, that's the plan right now. I'm sure if you've heard the news that you know there's some question about what will be. That's the plan. So if that changes, we will let you know. But that is the plan. We will meet Christmas Eve, Friday night at 6 p.m. for a candlelight service together as a body of Christ. So this is just a reminder. So next Sunday, Boxing Day, it's just an online service. So we'll ask you, you can take part of that if you choose online. And the following week, Sunday, January 2nd, Brandon and I will be on some vacation time, resting and hopefully visiting with some friends and family. So we will not be here Sunday, January 2nd. So the plan, we're gone. There will be... Or Boxing Day. No church services. Do not come to the building the next 2 Sundays. So the plan is we'll meet January 9th, I guess is that Sunday. So 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks. It looks like if you look in the shifts for the kettles, they're almost full. I made an error. My goodness. One of many mistakes I've made. I forgot to put a box for Monday, for tomorrow. So if you're able to do a shift, we are looking to fill the kettle tomorrow at Walmart. The Chartrons one is done. Thank you to those who filled it. It was very empty for the week, so to save us all the stress, we're just going to pull it. So if you're able to do a shift at Walmart tomorrow between 10 and 6, please feel free to sign up. I see you, Audrey. We appreciate your faithfulness. For those of you who have done shifts, thank you so much. You've been so faithful to that ministry, and it has been a fruitful year. Last I checked, we were about 85% of our goal. So that's great. We're doing really, really well. So we appreciate all of your hard work, and that's a reflection on all of you who have put in hours and hours of time at the kettles this year. I think that's all our announcements.
Wow.
Can you think of anything else? All right, so Brandon's going to start the service with the Advent reading.
Is it here? It's a call and response reading, so I'll be the reader since I'm reading, and then you guys can be the all when the all comes up. Every year we light candles as we prepare for the coming of Christ. More and more candles, more and more light as we watch and wait for Jesus, the light of the world. Receive God's promise of love from Psalm 36. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. Your judgments are like the great deep. You save humans and animals alike, O Lord. Any more? That's it. Running out of time. I got it. All right, let's sing Silent Night. Let's just have a word of prayer. Gracious Father, we thank you for this time of Christmas. We thank you for the warm feelings that we get as we consider your Son, Jesus, laying in the manger. The angels in the sky singing your praises. The excitement that would have surrounded that time. Lord, we just think of these days here in our time. And with the confusion going on and the worries that we have, I just ask that you just invade our hearts and our minds and just give us that warmth of love. We just thank you for this time that we can gather together. Each day that we can gather together is a gift. We recognize that. Bless this service. Bless our time here as worship is had, as songs are sung, as a message is heard. Just speak to our hearts in these moments, Lord. Amen.
3 verses.
3 verses. I always get confused with song verses. How have you experienced God this week? This has become one of our, we were talking about this last night, this has become one of our favorite aspects of Sunday worship, is this engagement with and this understanding of how God interacts with us and how his Spirit influences the people around us, and if we're watching and listening, how we might see and hear God working in our lives. So feel free to share. I know each new week is new surprises and new experiences. So, did you raise your hand, Finley?
No, I'm putting
Okay.
on the sweater.
I was all excited there. I'm not gonna pick on Audrey.
This is very special and it's private, but it's something that she needs to share. There you go. Come on, you can do it.
I received this beautiful card from a friend of mine, and he put me in a position that only the Lord should understand. And thanks to thinking of it that way, I'm able to handle the praise that he gave me.
Nice.
She's not used to being praised.
thank you. Thank you for sharing it. It's hard to take praise, or it's hard to take accolades, I guess, sometimes when you feel like you don't deserve it. But I think we all have aspects of our lives where, you know, you try real hard and you do some really good things, and sometimes people want to say thank you for it. And so I think that's appropriate. Yes, Robert.
All this ice around, I would say with the beach. Nice that, Robert, I didn't teach you up there.
Yeah, we recognize that there's some of us that are experiencing exceptionally lonely times right now, and to have the Spirit guiding us and have this recognition that we have a Holy Father that is head over heels in love with us, that it's a powerful feeling of love, especially when you are feeling very alone. Bless you, Robert. Yes, Janice.
I thought the service, the longest night service, I thought it was lovely. And I saw God, I saw God's hand on me particularly, right? Like, because I was there, right? So that was how I saw. The reading was a reading that I was very familiar with, and I just felt very moved when I saw God.
Yeah, this week on Tuesday, we held a service called The Longest Night, and it's otherwise called a Blue Christmas, to kind of gather and experience Christmas when we're not in that kind of festive, happy, bubbly mood because we've experienced loss, or we're feeling lonely, or things are going on, and the realities of the world are really kind of weighing on us. And I think it's very, very important to acknowledge those feelings and to embrace them. And so we had that on Tuesday, and I agree with you, Janice. It was a heavy service, but it was a good service. I think it was a good time to reflect on the promises and the faithfulness of God in these moments when we are experiencing loss and loneliness. Anyone else?
When you watch the news and, like, you see so much commotion all around the world, it causes us to really appreciate the peace that we live in, that we have in Christ. And especially when you look at the children of the world, like that's where really, I feel such empathy for those that don't have, what they need even to survive. And sometimes when I'm sitting there and I'm watching Christian programming, and I'm thinking, are we doing enough, to help the world? But then I'm reminded that whatever we're able to do, that's what God appreciates. And we can only do what we can do. But one thing that we can always do is pray, and really, support the ministry that is supporting, especially the children of the world. Because we can't help everyone, but I keep telling you sometimes that whatever we're able to give, I said, beside our prayer is supporting these different ministries, supporting the church and all that. And I said, we're so blessed, sometimes we feel almost guilty, when you see the need around the world. So I really, sometimes I sit in my chair and I'm just praying, and I think, Lord, no one deserves this kind of blessings, but then Jesus paid the price for our salvation, and that includes everything in our lives. So I'm just totally grateful. It's also sometimes I feel sad by the fact that, we can, with our families and all that kind of stuff, but then I think, thank you, Lord, for watching over them and guiding them and knowing that we should go, So, praying for our families and our church and even the world, it's a full-time job, I think.
It really is. We're going to watch a video in a little bit about love. What's that?
I took it off.
You took it off?
What?
Well, we're going to add it back on because it's a very good video. but it really talks about like the greatest commandment of loving God and loving your neighbor. And I think, and April and I are part of this young adults group for the division, and it's called Living Sacrifice, and being a living sacrifice and working through discipleship of, we've engaged with 30 some odd 18 to 23-year-olds, and what does it mean to be a living sacrifice? And going to what you said, like there's so much need in the world. How can I live my life as a sacrifice, right? And so how do we give of our time? Because like Canada's a very wealthy nation. Many of us are not worried about where our next meal is coming from, whereas there's people in our community that are worrying about that. And so how can we give of that time and that resource to be able to support those and show that love and be a living sacrifice to love others? So do we have another song?
Yeah, we're going to sing. This is my favorite Christmas carol. It's not a super familiar one, but Come Thou Long Expected Jesus. And it talks about this longing because, of course, when Jesus came, he was the Messiah, and there was prophecies, and the people in biblical times were waiting and longing for this Messiah. But we find ourselves in the same position. We are longing for Jesus to return. He says, in scriptures, it says he will come. Revelation talks about a time when every tear will be wiped and there will be no more pain and suffering. And we as Christians believe this. So while we are celebrating, yes, the birth of Jesus, we are awaiting the arrival of Jesus again. So this song really speaks to that. So I just invite you to join in Come Thou Long Expected Jesus. Come thou long expected Jesus, born to set thy people free from our fears and sin, to release us, let us find our rest in thee. Israel's strength and consolation, hope of all the earth thou art, dear desire of every nation, joy of every longing heart. Born thy people to deliver, born a child and yet a king, born to reign in us forever. Now thy gracious kingdom bring, by thine own eternal Spirit, rule in all our hearts alone. By thine all-sufficient merit, raise us to thy glorious throne.
It's a good one.
Hey, my kids, Theo and Harrison, come here. That's the most obedient they've been all week.
You sure you don't have 4 kids?
No, I don't.
No.
Because Ruth might as well be one too.
No, she listens, she's doing a great job.
All right. I think, there we go, it's working. All right, so today is the 4th Sunday of Advent. Advent's that time when what?
When you count down until Christmas Day.
When you're counting down to Christmas Day, right? So today the theme is Christmas. Daddy's talking about, do you guys know what he's talking about? What? What's the theme?
The visit of
The visit of Magi. Well, from the visit of Magi, he's going to talk about love.
There.
Is that better? There we go. Is that better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're reading from Matthew later, right? I'm going to look at Luke really quickly. Luke chapter 2. Luke has a lot to say about Jesus when he was born. Luke chapter 2, verse 15 to 20. All right. So we looked at this last week. When the angels had left them and returned to heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go straight to Bethlehem and see what has happened, which the Lord has made known to us." So where did the shepherds go? They hurried off to Bethlehem, and who did they find? Jesus. Jesus with who? His mommy and his daddy?
Yeah.
Mary and Joseph.
And the angel come to them and they found them.
They said, yeah, the angel came and said, go to Bethlehem and find the baby laying in a brand new crib.
No.
In a beautifully decorated nursery.
No. No.
In a castle.
No. In a house, and he was laying on hay.
He was laying on hay. Yeah, Jesus was born where like animals were kept, right? We'd say a manger. So they hurried off, and after seeing them, they reported the message they were told about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said. But Mary was treasuring up all these things in her heart and meditating on them. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen. Okay, have you ever looked forward to something for a really, 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 really long time, and when it happened, it didn't go the way you expected? I think the last 2 years have taught us all that experience, right?
So, if you've heard of Jesus, you probably know about one of his famous teachings called the Golden.
That did happen. So can you think of a time? What happened?
That happened to you 1 billion times.
It happened to me a lot of times, yeah. What happened, Finn?
Last year's Christmas too.
Last year's Christmas, right. We were looking forward to it, and what happened?
It didn't go as planned.
It did not go as planned. We didn't get to see our friends and family, right? I think about, we were in training college for 22 months, and the whole time you're in training college, you look forward to your commissioning and ordination. It's a big day, and your family comes, and you get this big special day. What happened? Didn't happen. Didn't happen like we thought, right? It ended up being in Winnipeg. We didn't see all the people we thought we would. So, no, thank you. So in this story, when Jesus was born, he was placed in a manger. How do you think Mary felt about that? Stop. Sad? Finley, what do you think? Do you think she was excited by that?
No. Yeah.
Do you remember where Theo was when he was born? In a hospital. Was it clean? Was he safe? Were there any animals?
No.
Was there any animal poop on the floor?
No.
Nope. Did I have lots of doctors and nurses around when he was born? Yes. So that probably wasn't how Mary imagined. Harrison, you need to sit down, please. She could have looked at the shepherds, and she could have said, nope, 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 nope. I don't want to hear what you have to say. This is not what I want. This is not how I wanted this to happen. But instead, what did she do? She listened. She listened to them. And she chose to listen to the whole story that they had said and let them tell her their amazing story. And because she chose to be open, the shepherds left to share this good news with everyone. What do you do when things don't go the way you planned? When you feel nervous or afraid, or the ground feels like it's shaking underneath your feet?
I feel like it's fine.
You feel like it's fine? That's a good thing. Some of us sometimes get really tense and we don't want to have it, and we get really mad and we don't let it happen because they think it'll protect them. And sometimes they lock other people out, or they get angry and they don't want to hear it, or they don't want to talk about it. But when Mary opened her heart to the unexpected, she chose love. And it transformed her own heart, but it also transformed the world, because we know what Jesus did. So this is what happens when you open your heart and choose love. So Daddy's going to talk about love later on. But as we go into this last week before Christmas, there's only 5 or 6 more sleeps, I can't remember. Let's think about love and how we can let love, especially as we think maybe some things aren't going to go the way we had planned. Maybe things are going to look a little bit different than we wanted, but we can choose love, right? All right.
We're going to do a video, and then Finley's going to read scripture for us. I hope it's the right video. There was a couple about love.
Did you watch it before?
It should be the next slide.
I don't think this is the right one.
Press on air. There you go.
Hello, Mr. Trees.
I don't know how to do this.
It's muted.
Called the Golden Rule. Do to others what you would want them to do to you. And this, actually, is a restatement of something else that Jesus said, that the meaning of life is to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, that's really beautiful, but what does he mean exactly by the word love? It's an unclear word in English, because you can love your mom and you can love pizza. And if the word love means the same thing in both of those cases, your mom's gonna feel real bad. So what did Jesus mean in his language? Well, first of all, this love your neighbor phrase is a quotation from the Hebrew scriptures, where the word for love is ahava. However, the language Jesus spoke and taught in from day to day was a cousin language of Hebrew, that is Aramaic, in which the word for love is rahma. But then, as Jesus' followers spread his teachings around the world, they translated them into Greek, using the word agape. But here's what's fascinating. The earliest followers of Jesus, who wrote the books of the New Testament in Greek, they didn't learn the meaning of agape by looking it up in ancient dictionaries. Rather, they looked to the teachings of Jesus and the story of his life to redefine their very concept of love. So one time, Jesus was asked about the most important command in the Jewish scriptures. And he first quoted from the ancient prayer in the Torah called the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart. So love for God is the most important thing. But then Jesus quickly followed up by saying another command from the Torah was also the most important, to love your neighbor as yourself. So which is the most important, loving God or loving your neighbor? Jesus' answer is yes. To ask the question means you don't get his point. For Jesus, they are two sides of the same coin. Your love for God will be expressed by your love for people, and vice versa, they're inseparable. And so this makes it clear that for Jesus, agape love is not primarily a feeling for someone else that happens to you, like our phrase, I fell in love. For Jesus, love is action. It's a choice that you make to seek the well-being of people other than yourself. Jesus also went on to teach that genuine love for God and others means seeking people's well-being without expecting anything in return, especially from people who are in difficult situations, who can't repay you even if they wanted to. According to Jesus, this kind of generous love reflects the very heartbeat of God. And he took this even further. Jesus said that the ultimate standard of authentic love is how well you treat the person that you can't stand. Or in his words, you shall love your enemy and do good to them, expecting nothing in return. For Jesus, this kind of enemy-embracing love imitates the very character of God himself. Now, we wouldn't be talking about Jesus still today if he had only said things like love your enemy. This is how he actually lived. Jesus was constantly helping and serving the people around him in very practical and tangible ways. And he consistently moved towards poor and hurting people who couldn't benefit him in return. He showed love for the forgotten ones, the people who usually fall through the cracks. And when Jesus eventually marched into Jerusalem, he made himself an enemy of the leaders of his people by accusing them of hypocrisy and corruption. But then instead of attacking his enemies to overthrow them, he allowed them to kill him. Jesus died for the selfishness and corruption of his enemies because he loved them. After Easter morning, Jesus and then his followers claimed that it was the power of God's love for the world that was revealed in Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. As the Apostle Paul put it, God demonstrated his own agape for us in this: while we were still sinners, the Messiah died for us. Or in the words of the Apostle John, God's own agape was revealed when he sent his one and only Son into the world so that through him we could have life. And for John, then, this leads naturally to the conclusion, beloved ones, if that's how God has loved us, then we ought to show love for one another. So, Christian faith involves trusting that at the center of the universe is a being overflowing with love for his world, which means that the purpose of human existence is to receive this love that has come to us in Jesus and then to give it back out to others, creating an ecosystem of others-focused, self-giving love. And that's the New Testament meaning of agape love.
I think that was a different video than the other one, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, it's still.
All right, Finley, come on up. You want to just sit in the chair like you were this morning?
Sure.
Welcome to Story Time with Finley.
After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in Judah, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard that he was disturbed, all Jerusalem with him, when he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judah," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out that from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and take a careful search for this child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to a house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. They had been warned in the dream not to go back to Herod, or they returned to their country by another route.
Thank you, sir. That is the word of the Lord. We want this place to be a place for children to feel involved and to feel welcome, and that's why Finley is our chief sound engineer at the back and also occasional scripture reader. And so I think those sorts of things are why April and I are still in the church, is we were engaged as young children and as teenagers to be involved in church. And we were in a worship team and all that kind of stuff. So if we can keep our kids active and doing things in the church, then I hope that they stay in the church. Because there's a lot of young people not here anymore. So we've heard a lot about this story. We've heard it at least once a year for however many years old you are. Some of us it's only 4 years. Others of us is a few more. And as I read it, I kind of just glaze over it. You get the happy-feely, the wise men and the shepherds and all these people. So as I did research for this, to prepare a sermon, there's a lot of research involved, and we read a lot of books that talk about context and talk about traditions of the time and all this kind of stuff. So bear with me as we kind of go through some of the things I found out about this passage. So firstly, we often think that there was 3 wise men, 3 magi, or kings from the east. You'll notice that in the passage, not once did it say that there was only 3. We've drawn this conclusion because there's 3 gifts. There's gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so our brains just automatically say, well, each one of them had one of those gifts, so there was 3 guys. That's not the case. We don't know how many there were. There could have been 15 guys, and they all carried different stuff. There could have been 2 guys. Who knows? We also like to think that according to our nice little nativity sets that we have, that the shepherds and the wise men all rolled in the night Jesus was born, and it was a big happy festival of shepherds and strangers from the east, and poor Mary, who'd just given birth and didn't want visitors, and here's a bunch of strangers roll in. That's also not the case. If you look closer at the scripture, you'll notice that there's a few hints to this. So while the wise men probably did see something the night that Jesus was born, a star in the sky, it would have been from across the continent, because we know they're from the east. We don't know what country it was. But they probably would have spent weeks preparing for their journey. And to make that kind of trek on foot, or by camel, or by carriage, it would have taken many more months to cover that kind of ground. And if you think there's no direct route from, well, there wasn't a direct route from China to Israel, or wherever these guys were from. We know that they were from the east, but there's no direct highway. There's no 407 that you can get a toll and get there faster. And seasons happen as well. So if these guys were traveling, the seasons probably changed while they were partway there. And I don't know much about the Middle East or that part of East Asia. Is the winters really bad there, so they had to stop for a few months? Or maybe you can't travel at all in the summertime because it gets too hot. Or maybe in the fall, in the monsoon season, they had to hunker down for a few months. So they probably arrived upwards of a year after Jesus was born. And the evidence that points to this actually comes from later in the passage in verses 14 and 16. Herod, because he was insanely jealous and didn't want this young baby king to overthrow him, he ordered the murder of every male child in that area that was 2 years old and younger. So Herod had an understanding that this Jesus was probably upwards of 2 years old by this point. So if he had been looking for a freshly born, couple-day-old baby, he wouldn't have ordered the murder of 2-year-olds. Another observation: these wise men were experts on the sky. They understood the placement of the stars and would have had the skies mapped out. They were actually astrologers. And they seem to have merged their belief of ancient astrology to some understanding of the Old Testament and its prophecies. Otherwise, how would they have known to come west in search of a baby? What it ended up being was these experts in Far Eastern understanding of the nature and of the sky and of the cosmos, investigating something foretold generations and generations before from a different faith tradition, and in turn, worshiping this child they found as their very own Lord. They actually became the first Gentile believers, the first non-Jewish worshipers of God the Son. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, birthed into and raised by a family of peasant Jews, and we learned last week, was revealed first to shepherds, the lowest of the low. They were first to hear the proclamation of Jesus from God's own holy messengers, and then later revealed to learned and wealthy foreign Gentiles. Now this is a new thing, completely new way of faith, and to welcome such a diverse community into the very infancy of this new world order. This baby is different. The first months and years of his life are marked as different than anyone that had come before. When you think on the level of change that this would have brought right at the very beginning, you can see why the established leaders of the time, the Pharisees, why they were so angry, why they got their backs up, and why they were so offended. Just think in our own context. How often is change just easily accepted? Even here. If I said, today is our last Sunday worship, we're going to worship on Thursday evenings from now on, who would be happy about that? Right? Even if there was a super good reason for it, it would still be, oh, I can't believe that we're changing. That's too much. And really, the truth of it is, it's not that big a deal. But it would ruffle feathers, wouldn't it? Imagine that tiny change would make people upset. Imagine this world-shifting change in this culture. What sort of thing can connect such a diverse group of people? We know from last week that the shepherds had been living on the edge of society. They weren't welcome because of their perceived uncleanliness of having to remain in the fields with animals all the time. They couldn't take part in the ritual cleaning and the rituals that they had to do as Jews. They probably couldn't read or really do anything of value to anyone else other than providing wool or meat. Yet we learned that last week that the very grandest of all announcements was made to a bunch of dudes living in a field. The heavens opened, and a host of heavenly beings sang and pronounced the birth of Jesus. No one should have believed these guys. Most people probably didn't believe them. And now in this passage that we read today, that these three wise men, these three kings or these magi, turned up at Herod's office asking questions about a new king. We read that Herod is upset and worried. And the people of Jerusalem were like, what's this? What is this going on? He in turn calls all his chief priests, all the Pharisees, all the people that are supposed to know about this, because these magi knew something that he didn't. His inner council advised that the prophecies say that the Messiah is going to be born in a small little village in Bethlehem. So he tries to trick these guys and saying, go find out where he is and let me know so that I can come worship him as well. We know that it's false because a few verses later, or it would have been a fair amount of time later, that in his insecurity, in his jealousy, he had all the children in the neighborhood murdered. Another sign that this prophesied child would bring great change to the world. Now at Christmas time, we can kind of fall guilty of putting on rose-colored glasses and just getting excited for Christmas and the warm feelings and the eggnog and gingerbread and all this kind of stuff and just kind of glazing over all of this stuff. We wander the stores looking for gifts for our kids and our grandkids and talk about Santa and what do we want from Santa, all these things. We sit in church and we listen to a Christmas story and it brings back all the memories of listening to the Christmas story when we were kids. And we can glaze over so many of these details where we imagine a nativity scene with angels and sheep and a donkey and a bunch of strangers and smelly farmers and, right? Like, this is kind of the view that we have. But we know that, and even from last week, we know that this Christmas is not like that. There's a reality that we live in, and it's the same for every single one of us, that life is not always just sunshine and lollipops. And this was the reality for Mary and Joseph at this time, and for those shepherds, and for most of the people in that area. Christmas can sometimes bring forward feelings of loss or loneliness. negative experiences. Or it could reveal stress and challenges that we're dealing with. So what I want to make clear is that Christmas in its truest form doesn't wear rose-colored glasses. We read of a family desperate to find a place to stay and ended up staying in a stable. They had no friends or family to help them, and they were alone. They were threatened by the ruler of the land and had to leave and flee to Egypt to save their very lives. And then probably get word that after they left, all the children, the little boys under 2 years old were all killed. While we can't control the actions of others, we do acknowledge that evil does exist in the world around us. But what I want to get back to is, if we ignore these things, if we just glaze over it with our rose-colored glasses, there's an undercurrent to this story that we can miss. If we just focus on the warm fuzzies, or if we wear blinders to the harder things in life, we might miss this undercurrent in the story. This baby Jesus brings people together. As a baby, he was breaking down barriers and lifting people up. This is a level of love that comes from the Father that encompasses diversity. It welcomes the outsider. It loves the unloved. It comforts the sad. He brings value to those in our society, to those that the dominant society does not. When we break through all that noise of Christmas and the feelings that we all bring to it, that's what this story is meant to convey. The God of creation sent his Son to bring people together. People that society has said are not welcome or are different. And we can see that today. If you're sad because it's Christmas, you have a connection with other believers here that can help lift you up. If you're happy because it's Christmas, you have a connection here with other believers where you can lift others up. If you're overwhelmed because it's Christmas, remember that Mary and Joseph were overwhelmed too when they were dealing with all that they had on their plate. And yet God honored them more than anyone else because they trusted in his plan for their lives. If you're a sheep herder and no one likes you because you hang out with sheep all day, maybe one day an angel will appear to you and make you the greatest messenger of all time. Because to God, you are more precious than gold. So this Christmas, as we sit with all the things, whatever's sitting heavy on us, however you're feeling, if you are excited and you want those warm fuzzies, that's totally okay. It's all right to be where you are in this moment. Just know that this infant king, this peasant baby, he brought together different cultures. He removed societal class systems just in the act of being born. Let his life bring change to your life. When you read the scriptures, when you read these familiar passages, take some time. Read the details. Think on them. What does that mean? There's a connection here in this passage. This connective love that can only come through God the Son. He wants it for you, and he wants it for me, and he wants it for all the people. out there. That's all I have for today. Is this connected love. There's magic in the details of these passages. Sometimes I can only, magic isn't the right word, but sometimes I can only describe it as magic. It's just something unexplainable. It's something that is past what I can convey. And that's the connection of love that Jesus brings. Yeah, that's all I can say on that. It's powerful. It's very powerful, no matter where you find yourself. Whether it's a good place or a bad place or somewhere in between. There's a connection here that only Jesus can bring. Let's sing this really fantastic song. As we sing it, kind of put yourself in the place of the shepherds in the field. They were just kind of, maybe they had a fire going to keep the wolves away, and all of a sudden the sky just explodes in light. And the most wonderful experience the world has ever seen is revealed to you. And you feel worthless. You feel like, I don't have any friends. I don't have anyone around me other than my colleagues, my fellow farmers out in the field here. In this pivotal moment in history, a child is born and it alters the path of humanity forever. And you were there at the beginning. That's powerful stuff. And we have that today. Let's sing together. Wherever you find yourself this week, remember that. Allow the Holy Spirit to use you in somebody's life this week. Say Merry Christmas and let them see the smile on that little space between your hair and your nose. Your eyes smile. Allow that connection to others. We learned about that love, that agape love, the love God, and yes, also love your neighbor and show that love in that way. Yeah, this connection is just, that's as I'm talking about it, the connection is really coming through of how Jesus connects people. He's connected all of us in this place. So go out this week, enjoy your frantic shopping if you've got some shopping to do. Sign up for a kettle so that you can yell Merry Christmas to people as they walk by. And Ed, I know you'll be there. Thank you, everyone. God bless you all. And we'll see you on Christmas Eve. What day is that? Friday?
Friday.
Friday night, 6 o'clock.
Why Friday? I thought we only Amen.